The war room corridor inside Facility Echo 7 always smelled like two things: cold steel and ambition. Trainees rushed in and out carrying tablets, folders, or egos too big for their lanyards. It was the kind of hallway where careers began, or collapsed before lunch, which is why everyone stopped when Ryan Keller shoved her. He did it casually, like someone nudging a chair out of the way. His shoulder hit hers hard enough to make the papers in her hand shift, but she didn't stumble. She didn't gasp. She didn't even blink. She simply placed one foot behind the other, grounding herself instantly, her eyes scanning the corridor with slow, surgical precision. Ryan, with his too new badge and too loud confidence, smirked at her. "Ma'am, this hallway is for authorized personnel. Maybe try the visitors' lounge?" A few trainees snickered. One looked horrified. Another backed away like he'd just witnessed a man step onto a landmine. The woman didn't turn her head immediately. She took a breath, deep, measured, devoid of fear. When her eyes finally lifted to meet his, they weren't angry. They were ancient, as if she had seen entire empires rise and fall between dawn inspections. "I am exactly where I need to be," she said quietly. Ryan barked a laugh. "Yeah? And who exactly are you? The janitorial consultant?" Someone in the back whispered, "Oh, God." Ryan didn't notice. His ego was already on a downhill sprint. He planted himself in front of her again. "Step aside. This isn't a toy tour for civilians." Her voice dropped half an octave. Calm, steady, lethal in how soft it was. "Do not put your hands on me again." Ryan rolled his eyes, lifted his hand as if to guide her away, and instantly froze. In the space of a heartbeat, she shifted her wrist and twisted his grip off her arm, using nothing but precision and leverage. The movement was so small, most people missed it. But the crack of his thumb joint told everyone exactly how real it was. Ryan yelped. The hallway fell into suffocating silence. And then, doors slammed open at the far end. Footsteps thundered. Voices barked orders. Something big was coming, and Ryan had no idea he was standing in front of a classified lightning storm. Before we continue, if this moment already hooked you, help our new channel grow. Hit subscribe and support these weekly stories so we can keep bringing them to life. Ryan Keller should have backed away. Anyone with instincts, military, survival, or basic emotional intelligence would have recognized the danger humming beneath her stillness. But arrogance is louder than instinct, and Ryan's had been screaming for years. He shook his hand out, wincing at the throb running through his thumb. "You attacked me," he snapped. "That's assault on a federal trainee." "Incorrect," she said, cutting him off with a calmness that made several people tense. "You initiated physical contact. I neutralized it." Ryan's face flushed bright red. Embarrassment was gasoline to his temper. "Lady," he hissed, "I don't care if you've taken a weekend self-defense class. This is a restricted corridor. I can have you detained." A trainee behind him whispered sharply, "Stop. Seriously, stop. Don't touch her again." Ryan ignored him. Of course he did. He stepped forward, invading her space again. "This is your last warning. Move aside or—" Her eyes lifted. Not hurried, not frightened. Just a slow, inevitable rise, like someone deciding whether to extinguish a flame or let it burn itself out. "You are escalating a confrontation you cannot control," she said, "and you are embarrassing your entire cohort." That sentence hit harder than the wrist lock. The surrounding trainees stiffened. Some lowered their eyes, ashamed for him. Others subtly stepped back, wanting no part of whatever was about to unfold. Ryan barked a humorless laugh. "Embarrass? You're the one lost in a classified wing. Matter of fact—" He reached for her arm, and that was the moment everything snapped. She caught his wrist midair with 2 fingers. 2. Her grip didn't tighten. It didn't need to. Something in her posture, something cold and efficient, made it clear she could have shattered his radius without effort. "Do not reach for me again," she said. The sentence landed like a quiet explosion. Someone gasped. Someone else whispered a prayer. No one breathed. Then, the emergency door at the north end of the corridor slammed open so hard it bounced off the stopper. Boots thundered toward them, heavy, authoritative, urgent. A voice barked, "Move!" Trainees scattered instantly. Ryan turned, startled. She didn't move an inch. A team of high-ranking intelligence officers was sprinting straight toward them, and every single one of them had their eyes locked on her. They weren't coming to rescue Ryan. They were coming because they knew exactly who she was. The officers sprinting down the corridor weren't running like people responding to a disturbance. They were running like people responding to a disaster. Ryan felt a flicker of satisfaction. Finally, someone was coming to put this civilian troublemaker in her place. But the woman still hadn't moved. She stood exactly where she'd been, spine straight, breath steady, expression unreadable. Trainees pressed against the walls as the incoming team approached. A deputy division chief, 2 senior intelligence officers, and a logistics commander. All of them looked pale. All of them looked terrified. Not of Ryan. Not of the situation. But of her. At that exact moment, a junior analyst came skidding into the hallway from the opposite end, tablet clutched against his chest. His name was Adam Reyes, fresh from orientation briefing, and the kind of trainee who actually listened in class. He stopped dead in the middle of the corridor, eyes widening. Then his face drained completely of color. "Oh no," he whispered. "Oh no, no, no." A nearby trainee grabbed his sleeve. "What? Do you know her?" Adam swallowed, his throat clicking. "That's Agent Reyes." Blank stares met his whisper. The name meant nothing to 90% of the corridor. Adam leaned closer, voice trembling. "She's Tier 1. Black Ops, internal liaison for the director. She doesn't even have a public file. She runs operations we aren't cleared to hear about." A beat of stunned silence. Then the trainee who had been laughing earlier muttered, "Ryan is so dead." Adam shook his head frantically. "Dead? No, his career is dead. His clearance is dead. His badge is dead. His future is..." A booming voice cut through the corridor. "Out of the way!" The officers arrived in a wave of authority and panic, brushing past the frozen trainees like they were paper. Ryan straightened, trying to look injured and offended. "Sir, thank God you're here. She attacked me. None of the officers looked at him. Not one. Instead, the deputy division chief stopped 3 feet in front of her and snapped into a salute so crisp it echoed off the steel walls. "Good afternoon, Agent Reyes," he said, voice tight with fear. "We were not informed you were conducting an inspection." Gasps rippled like a shockwave. Agent Reyes lifted her chin a fraction. "I'm not conducting an inspection," she replied calmly. "I'm attempting to walk down a hallway." Her eyes slid, slowly, deliberately, toward Ryan. "And I was obstructed." Ryan felt the world tilt beneath him. His mouth went dry, his vision tunneled. Agent Reyes was not a civilian. She was the most dangerous person in the building. Ryan Keller had always believed that fear came with noise, shouting, slamming doors, barking commands. But this fear was silent. The entire corridor had gone so still, it felt refrigerated. Even the hum of the fluorescent lights seemed to shrink from Agent Reyes. The deputy division chief kept his salute held, unwavering, rigid, almost painful. Behind him, the 2 senior intelligence officers snapped to attention so abruptly it startled the trainees near them. The logistics commander followed, hands behind his back, chin tucked, posture immaculate. All of them facing her. None of them acknowledging Ryan. He tried anyway. "Sir," he said, stepping forward. "This woman, Agent Reyes, she physically grabbed me and..." "Silence," the division chief said, without looking at him. The word hit like a metal door slamming shut. Ryan froze mid-step, mid-breath, mid-life. Agent Reyes didn't turn to him yet. She kept her eyes on the division chief. "You arrived quickly," she said. He swallowed. We were alerted by a junior analyst who believed there was an imminent escalation. Her eyebrow lifted. I see. Behind them, Adam Reyes, the analyst who made the call, looked like he was contemplating a career change to underwater welding, anything to escape the energy vibrating through the corridor. The division chief cleared his throat. Agent Reyes, I assure you, we will handle this immediately. The trainee responsible will be... She finally turned her head. Not fast, not dramatic, just enough. Her gaze landed on Ryan like a sniper scope. The division chief went silent. A full beat passed. Then she spoke. In the last 30 seconds, she said quietly, you've referred to me as this woman, dismissed my presence, attempted to physically remove me from a federal corridor, grabbed my arm, and raised your voice in a secured zone. Each accusation was delivered like a blade, sliding neatly into place. Ryan felt his knees weaken. He opened his mouth, but she cut him off with a glance so cold, he snapped it shut again. Deputy Chief, she said without breaking eye contact with Ryan, before we proceed, I want the record to reflect that I remained non-aggressive. I used minimal necessary force only to disengage his hand. Of course, the chief said quickly. Absolutely. Logged. And that this trainee, she added, is not at fault for ignorance. Several heads jerked up. She stepped closer to Ryan, her voice dropping to a whisper engineered to carry. Ignorance can be corrected. She let the silence hang. Arrogance cannot. A tremor ran through Ryan's shoulders. The division chief inhaled sharply, as if bracing for the collapse of a building. Agent Reyes straightened. Proceed, she said, which meant now she was ready to address the consequences. And Ryan Keller finally understood how small he truly was. The division chief didn't look at Ryan at all, not even a flick. He faced Agent Reyes the way a man faces a judge, reverent, tense, praying not to make a fatal misstep. Agent Reyes, he said carefully, with your permission, we'll remove the trainee for immediate disciplinary processing. Ryan exhaled in relief. Finally. Finally, someone was going to explain this ridiculous misunderstanding. He wasn't a bad guy. He'd just been enforcing corridor protocol. Surely once they spoke privately, they would... No, Reyes said. The word froze him. The division chief blinked. No? Reyes clasped her hands behind her back, posture razor sharp. If you remove him now, you'll handle this behind closed doors. His peers will learn nothing. He will learn nothing except that punishment comes when the door is shut. Her eyes locked onto Ryan again. I prefer transparency. Every trainee in the corridor felt the temperature drop 10 degrees. Ryan swallowed hard. Reyes stepped forward, calm, deliberate, until there were only 2 feet between them. Then she asked the question that sealed his fate. Trainee Keller, what exactly gave you the impression that you had authority over a stranger in a secured hallway? His mind blanked, completely. I thought you were a visitor, he said weakly. And protocol says... Protocol? She repeated, tilting her head. Protocol does not grant you the right to shove anyone. I didn't shove. You made physical contact, she said. That is force. Force requires justification, authorization, and training. You had none of those. He could feel the eyes behind him, dozens of them, listening to every word. Reyes continued. You assumed superiority because you believed I was beneath you, not by authority, not by rank, but by appearance. The corridor stung with humiliation. That, she said, is arrogance, and arrogance in intelligence work gets people killed. Ryan's breath shuddered. Reyes turned to address the corridor at large, her voice carrying with perfect clarity. Every person you meet in a classified facility is here for a reason. Some of those reasons are above your clearance, some above mine. We do not bully what we do not understand. Silence. Absolute silence. Then she turned back to Ryan. You had a chance to de-escalate. You chose ego instead. He stared at the floor. Reyes nodded once, barely perceptible. The correction begins now. The division chief stepped forward, awaiting her instruction like a soldier waiting for orders. And Ryan's world, already cracking, prepared to shatter. Agent Reyes didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She stood perfectly centered in the corridor, hands clasped behind her back, chin level, eyes steady. Every senior officer surrounding her stood stiff as rebar. Every trainee held their breath. And Ryan. Ryan felt like the world had grown too small to breathe inside. Reyes finally addressed the division chief without looking away from Ryan. "Deputy Chief, confirm my assignment." The deputy chief swallowed so hard the sound echoed. "Yes, ma'am. Agent Reyes is the director's Tier 1 Black Ops liaison. Operational clearance. Above Omega." Gasps ricocheted through the corridor like suppressed explosions. Above Omega. That level wasn't spoken out loud. Most trainees didn't even know it existed. Ryan's knees nearly buckled. Reyes continued, "Confirm my authority in this facility." The deputy chief's voice almost cracked. "You outrank every field officer here, ma'am, including myself." More gasps, bigger this time, sharper. "Good," Reyes said, her tone unchanged. Then, finally, she turned fully to Ryan Keller. He felt the weight of a mountain settle across his shoulders. "Trainee Keller," she said, "you shoved an officer who outranks the entire corridor. You attempted to physically remove someone whose operational authority exceeds your clearance by 10 levels. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out but a tremor. "You shouted at me," she added, "in a secured hallway. You escalated a non-threat. You ignored verbal warnings, and you leveraged your position to intimidate someone you perceived as powerless." Each charge hit like a hammer blow. His face drained. His pulse thudded in his ears. His hands shook uncontrollably. Reyes stepped closer. Not threatening, not towering, just inevitable. "If I were vindictive," she said, "you would lose your clearance, your candidacy, and your career today." His breath caught. His world stalled. "But I don't destroy careers for ignorance," she continued. "I correct them." The division chief exhaled, as if he'd been waiting for that line to save them all from a meltdown. Reyes leaned in just enough for only Ryan and the entire silent corridor to hear. "Your problem is not lack of training. It's lack of humility." She straightened. "Deputy Chief," she said, "begin corrective action protocol. Here, now, in front of his peers." Ryan's head snapped up in horror. Here? In public? But the division chief was already stepping forward, his expression carved from stone. At that moment, Ryan realized something he should have known from the start. Agent Reyes didn't need to raise her voice to destroy him. All she needed to do was speak. Trainee Keller had imagined punishments before. Extra drills, reprimands, maybe even a formal write-up. But nothing prepared him for the humiliation of public corrective action in a silent corridor packed with people who had just witnessed every mistake he'd made. The division chief stepped forward. "Agent Reyes, with your authorization." "You have it," she said. He nodded, turning to Ryan with the expression of a man about to lower a gavel. "Trainee Keller," he said sharply, "front and center." Ryan's legs felt like sandbags. He stepped forward anyway. "Attention!" the chief barked. Ryan snapped into position, spine stiff, palms sweating, throat dry as desert dust. The chief circled him slowly, voice projecting to all the trainees lining the walls. "This facility does not break because of enemies. It breaks because of ego, because of arrogance, because of individuals who believe hierarchy gives them permission to mistreat others." He stopped behind Ryan. And today, Trainee Keller demonstrated all three. The shame burned hotter than any physical punishment could. But then Agent Reyes spoke, and the corridor fell into glacier silence. "Keller." Her tone wasn't angry, It wasn't raised. It was final. He braced. "You made 3 critical errors," she said, pacing slowly, hands behind her back like a surgeon preparing to dissect a problem. 1. She raised a finger. "You assumed authority based on appearance rather than protocol." Murmurs flickered through the trainees. 2. You escalated conflict instead of diffusing it, a fatal flaw in intelligence work. A few trainees shifted uncomfortably, absorbing the lesson like a blow. And 3. She stopped in front of him. You confused confidence with competence. You believed being loud made you strong. Her gaze sharpened. It does not. Ryan's breath trembled. Reyes turned to the corridor. All of you, she said, sweeping her eyes across the faces watching her, witness this moment. Because the difference between a good officer and a dead officer is often one thing. Humility. She faced Ryan again. You will undergo remedial behavioral training for the next 30 days. You will shadow support staff, learn the chain of respect, and document every incident where ego tempted you to react before thinking. Ryan blinked. That wasn't career ending. That was correction. Merciful correction. But then Reyes leaned in, so close no one else could hear, yet somehow the entire corridor felt the heat of her words. And Keller, she murmured, if you ever raise your voice at someone without knowing who they are, it will be the last voice you raise in this building. She stepped back. The lesson was over, but the consequences had just begun. The punishment started immediately. Not tomorrow. Not after paperwork. Not behind closed doors. Right there. The division chief pointed toward the end of the corridor. Logistics wing, now. Ryan Keller had never moved so fast in his life. Trainees parted for him like he carried a live explosive. No one smirked. No one whispered. No one dared make eye contact. They weren't witnessing humiliation anymore. They were witnessing a transformation forced into motion by the only person in the building who could demand it. The logistics officer waiting at the hallway junction looked Ryan up and down. You're Keller? He asked, unimpressed. Ryan nodded stiffly. Good, the officer said. Follow me. They walked past polished floors and high clearance doors until they reached a heavy metal staircase leading to the basement. The officer started down. Keller hesitated. The officer glanced back. This is where humility starts. The basement smelled like dust, crates, and government-issued industrial cleaner. It was where supplies were sorted, paperwork was boxed, shipments were verified. It was the opposite of glamorous. Exactly the point. Grab those bins, the officer said. Ryan lifted one and nearly dropped it. It was filled with classified document spines for archiving, heavier than it looked. Yeah, the officer said, humility has weight. For hours, Ryan sorted boxes, labeled crates, filed outdated materials, and learned the names of personnel he'd never noticed before. Logistics techs, mail processors, maintenance staff, people trainees usually ignored. Here, they didn't ignore him. They studied him cautiously, wondering if he was another arrogant candidate tossed down for punishment. But when he apologized, quietly, sincerely, to a technician he accidentally bumped while lifting a crate, she blinked at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. Then she smiled. Good start, she said. It stunned him more than any scolding. By the time the shift ended, Ryan's shirt clung to him with sweat. His hands burned from lifting boxes. His back ached. His pride stung. And when he walked back upstairs, the corridor looked different. Not threatening. Not humiliating. Just real. People walked with purpose. People he had underestimated. People he barely noticed before today. At the far end of the hallway, Agent Reyes passed through a set of double doors with the division chief beside her. She didn't acknowledge him, because she didn't need to. But for the first time, Ryan understood why her silence carried more authority than any shout. And he wanted, desperately, to become someone worthy of speaking in her presence again. 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks of basements, supply rooms, scrub brushes, mislabeled crates, and more humility practice than Ryan Keller had ever imagined possible. His hands no longer looked like those of a rising intelligence star. They looked like the hands of someone who had learned what real work felt like. His posture changed too. Less chest-forward swagger, more grounded awareness. Less noise, more listening. And for the first time since entering the facility, people actually smiled at him. Then came the day he least expected. Ryan was restocking encrypted comm units when the air in the logistics wing shifted. Not noticeably to most people, but to him, it felt like pressure before a storm. He turned. Agent Reyes walked through the doorway. In uniform this time. It was the first time he'd ever seen her in formal operational dress. Black cargo pants, fitted tactical jacket, high clearance badge clipped at her shoulder, and boots polished to an almost reflective sheen. Her presence didn't demand attention. It consumed it quietly. Everyone in the logistics wing froze. Reyes looked around the room once, eyes sharp, expression inscrutable, before settling on him. "Keller," she said. He stepped forward so fast he nearly tripped, stopping at attention. "Ma'am." A faint flicker of something, approval, amusement, crossed her eyes. The logistics officer hovered awkwardly nearby, half wanting to salute, half terrified to speak. Reyes walked toward Ryan, her steps precise, calm, lethal but peaceful at the same time. "You've been here 3 weeks," she said. "Yes, ma'am." 30 reports submitted. "Yes, ma'am." 7 behavioral evaluations. "Yes, ma'am." She studied him silently. It was worse than being shouted at. Then she nodded once. "You've changed." The words hit harder than any reprimand. Ryan exhaled carefully, not trusting himself to speak. Reyes reached into her pocket. For a moment, Ryan feared she was pulling out a badge to revoke his clearance. Or worse, a dismissal letter. Instead, she placed something small and worn on the metal shelf beside him. A coin, blackened from age, edges scratched, an emblem he didn't recognize, classified clearly. "This," Reyes said, "belonged to the mentor who trained me. I carried it through operations you will never read about." Ryan stood frozen. "It is not a reward," she continued. "It is a reminder." He swallowed hard. "A reminder of... what, ma'am?" She leaned in, just enough. "That strength without humility isn't strength at all." She stepped back. "When you feel ego rising," she said, "touch the coin. And remember today." Then she turned, leaving as silently as she had arrived. And for the first time, Ryan Keller felt something he had never expected. Gratitude for the woman who had destroyed him, and rebuilt him better. The days after Agent Reyes' visit felt strangely lighter. It wasn't that the workload changed. Ryan still hauled crates, sorted classified forms, and jogged between wings delivering secure packages, but he had changed. He moved with intention, listened more than he spoke, and understood the value of the people around him. And everyone noticed. The maintenance chief gave him a respectful nod. A logistics tech offered him coffee. Even the trainees who once laughed behind his back now asked him questions about protocol, humility, and how to avoid the mistakes he once made. But the biggest test came one afternoon in the comms corridor. A new trainee, bright-eyed, nervous, wearing a badge so fresh the lamination still smelled chemical, was trying to balance a stack of encrypted files when another candidate bumped into him hard enough to scatter them across the floor. "Watch it, rookie," the aggressor muttered, rolling his eyes. The words were painfully familiar. Ryan stepped forward before he even realized it. "Hey," he said, calm but firm. "Pick them up." The aggressor scoffed. "What? Are you in charge now?" Ryan didn't raise his voice, didn't puff his chest, didn't mimic the arrogance he once relied on. "No," he said, "but being decent doesn't require rank." The corridor went silent, eerily similar to the day everything changed. The aggressor hesitated, face tightening, but finally kneeled and helped gather the scattered files. Ryan nodded once, the same way Agent Reyes had done to him. That evening, while sitting alone in the break room, Ryan turned the blackened coin over in his fingers. The metal was warm from his touch, the edges rough, the emblem still inscrutable. But the lesson was clear. Strength wasn't in volume. Authority wasn't in appearance. Power wasn't in ego. It was in character. A soft knock echoed at the door. Ryan turned. Agent Reyes stood there, arms folded, expression unreadable. "Good work today," she said. He blinked. "You saw that?" She nodded. "Leadership echoes." He swallowed, suddenly unsure. "Am I back on track, ma'am?" Her eyes softened, just slightly. "You're not the same man who shoved a stranger in a corridor," she said. "You're better." She stepped back. "And now your training begins." The door closed behind her. Ryan Keller looked down at the coin in his palm and finally understood. She hadn't punished him. She had prepared him. Prepared him to become the kind of intelligence officer who didn't just follow protocol, but embodied it. If you want more stories like this, intense, cinematic, and full of justice, please subscribe and help our new channel grow. Your support means we can bring even more incredible stories to life every single week.